All right. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Hello and welcome. This is Rising from the Ashes, and we are here today with Steven Samra, and he is going to tell us a little story about how he overcame some struggles. So, Steven, if you would like to tell us your story.
Tracy, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really grateful, and I think this particular podcast is one of the most important podcasts that I've either contributed to or been able to be a part of. And the reason for that is because I have a long history of both mental illness and substance use disorder. It goes way back to childhood, and I can start by kind of just giving folks a little background about who I am and where I'm at today. So, as you said, my name is Steven Samra, and I have been the deputy director for the SAMHSA Brass Tax Project over the last 9 years. And that project came to a close in September of 2020. And I continue on in sort of recovery work and a variety of other contracts and opportunities that are in front of me. And the reason I'm even in those roles is because of the lived experience that I bring to the role and to the work generally. And that lived experience, as I mentioned early on, really started as a child. I came from a pretty traumatic home life, if you'd even call it that. My sister and I both had been essentially raised by a single parent. And through that period of time, we were children and moving into kind of those formative teenage years. My sister and I were shuffled around from family member to family member, and for a little while we were in foster care, and then back to some family members. And throughout that whole experience, a lot of just general sort of verbal abuse, neglect, isolation, the things that are really damaging to children who look to their parents and older family members as those folks who protect them from serious challenges and who share the love and the respect, and they provide the appropriate discipline and guidance that young children need as they're trying to reach adulthood. And so I can tell you all that because the trauma that my sister and I both experienced is complex. It's not a one-time event. It took place over a period of 10 or 12 years. And in all of that, the shuffling from household to household, and essentially I hate to say this about my mom. I love my mom to death, but the truth is there was a lot of neglect there. And the one constant that was always a part of my sister and my life was that animals were prominent in much of our young lives. And those animals we learned at an early age, they didn't care if you had carved your initial onto a piece of linoleum in the kitchen floor. They didn't care if you lit a trash can on fire because you were trying to help take out the trash. All these things happened to me, and they resulted in some pretty serious punishments. But through all that, the animals loved me, and they didn't judge me, and they provided comfort and love at a time when there was very little of either coming from our family members. So at that very early age, I developed a connection, particularly with dogs, but I'm a cat person, I'm a raccoon person, I'm a ferret person, I'm a horse person. Basically, if it's a critter, I'm pretty much going to love and protect it in any way that I can. That doesn't mean I'm not a meat eater. I still do that, although I will admit that the older I get, the more difficult that becomes, just because of my connection to the critters in my life. So, anyway, fast forwarding a bit into my adulthood and my journey in both active addiction and with unchecked mental health challenges. I lived a pretty challenging life, and I left school in the 7th grade, ran away and hitchhiked to Florida, and I began moving back and forth from Detroit to Florida, and for running drugs. It's really the easiest way to say it. And all through that time, as that was happening, animals were still a big part of my life. But I was in transit so much that I just didn't have a place that I could keep my animals in a way that they should be kept. I could have put them in the car with me. We hitchhiked a lot. It would have been very difficult to do that. And so I lost that sort of connection to my critters. I'll say this: I didn't lose it. It got suspended while I was busy living my life in active addiction and active mental health challenges. So those challenges continually caused problems to arise in my life, and those problems were building in their severity and seriousness over time. So anybody who's been actively addicted to a substance like heroin or any of the other drugs out there knows that those lifestyles begin to become all-consuming, and they continually put you in ever more serious danger, both from accidental overdose, the legal system, the family, the units around you. All of those things get impacted by addiction and by untreated mental health challenges. So I have known for a long time that I probably had a mental health issue going on, but the truth is, because of stigma, because I had seen how our community, our brothers and sisters, my parents and family members, how they treat people with a mental illness, horrific. It's terrible. And so I didn't admit to that. And in fact, I had lied to myself enough that for much of my adult life, I just would never admit that I had a mental health challenge, particularly a serious one. And I used to say, well, listen, I might be a dope fiend, but I'm not crazy. And the truth is that I was never crazy, but I was dealing with some mental health issues that were the reason that I was self-medicating. And I had not been able to make that connection at the time anyway. But there is clearly no doubt for me that in the active use, what I was doing was attempting to medicate away the mental health challenges that were causing me so many challenges in holding a job, challenges in trying to go to school, challenges in engaging appropriately with family members, with the general public, with my peers and my friends, and all of that was a result of my inability to control the way that my emotions express themselves. So this emotional dysregulation that I had, I was going to say had, but the truth is I have it to this very day, would cause the most difficult and embarrassing challenges for me, because early on I learned that let me share a story. So when I was a young lad, about 5 or 6, my father was long gone. I don't know my father. And my mother had tried to go to college. This is 1965. And when she went to school, she left us with her brother and his husband, or his wife. And it was a really abusive, verbally abusive home. And long after I had left there and grown up, I learned that my sister was the person that my aunt and uncle wanted to come live with them. They didn't really want me there, but in order to get my sister, they had to agree to take us with them. So I didn't know that at 5 years old, but what I can tell you is that I remember how I was treated, and I can remember the wild difference between how I was treated and how my sister and her cousin were both treated. And so I share that because it was hellish. And I left that home and returned a few years later. I probably was 9 or 10. And I was back at this house for just a couple of weeks. I remember that for whatever reason, my mother needed a place for me and my sister to be, and this place turned out to be the place that was available. So I was outside one afternoon. I don't know what I was doing, but my aunt came out, and she was in attack mode, basically. And she was raising the riot act around something that I had done, and I don't remember what that was. And she started to come at me. And when she came at me, there was a bat. And I think it was a wiffle ball bat, so it wasn't a serious bat, but it was a bat. It was laying down on the ground, and I picked that bat up. And I told her, basically, as I was smacking the bat in my palm, not today. And I saw the fear in her face, and I watched her back up away from me, and I realized at 9 or 10 that when I pick up the bat, people listen to me and they leave me alone. And that became my default response, and it is still a default response to this day. And I have spent a big chunk of my life trying to figure out how to control that piece, that don't pick up the bat, find another way piece. And I'll be honest, it's still challenging and difficult because I got results with that. And that's what taught me to pick up the bat when I needed people to hear me. So, dealing with that, you can imagine what those who are charged with helping those of us with serious mental illness and addictive challenges, they will say that we are non-compliant. They will say that this is the way that you, as you express these emotions, they are, Callie, I'm sorry, I can't think of the term right now, but it is saying essentially that you're unable